Have you been growing up in the 2000s like me? No, you don't? Well, get ready because I'm talking about one of the best channels that I've ever watched during my young years. And what is it? It's PBS Kids Sprout. Later known as Sprout, then Universal Kids, and more recently, it's now defunct. It's been a few years since I did my downfall of Sprout slash Universal Kids What Went Wrong video. I always want to make an updated version because honestly, Universal Kids, whew, did it really fail? But right now, it seems that it's time to give this Universal Kids brand a updated history of its own. And like what happened to Universal Kids, that it was a huge flop and a failure. Universal should have just let the channel alone instead of rebranded it. Don't ever fix that ain't broke. Oh, Artie Raccoon says. Let's dive down to the history of Universal Kids, or as we affectionately call it, PBS Kids Sprout. Before PBS Kids, there was PBS. And before PBS, there was NET, or the National Educational Television Network. When it was replaced by PBS, it had children's programming on the network. It became known as For Kids. Then, by the 90s, PBS rebranded its children's programming block as PTV, or stylized as PTV Park. Various shows that aired during the PTV era, like Barney and Friends, Arthur, Zaboomafoo, The Hugabug Club, and Theodore Tugboat. On September 6, 1999, on the same day Disney's 1-2 premiered, PBS Kids was launched, and it underwent a major facelift. It introduced us two characters, Dash and Dot. Alongside that, a new graphic has been unveiled and was overseen by a lot of kids alongside with the parents of the kids. September 6th, 1999 also saw the launch of the PBS Kids channel. It was supposed to be direct companion rival to Noggin when that channel came out in February of that year. However, by the 2000s, the channel was completely unsuccessful, and it wasn't as widely popular as Noggin as it is. But this would all change. Following the failure of PBS's original 24-hour PBS Kids channel, on October 20th, 2004, the public broadcasting service PBS announced that it entered a partnership with cable provider Comcast, later Xfinity, and production companies Hit Entertainment and Sesame Workshop to launch a 24-hour cable network aimed at preschoolers. While PBS Kids mainly still targets young children, it is more of a wide spectrum than just preschoolers. PBS Kids was aimed more at the 3 to 7 crowd. The new channel will be aimed at kids aged 3 to 4 or younger, kind of like what Baby First TV would have done. On April 4th, 2005, Comcast announced that the network would be a new offshoot brand of PBS Kids, PBS Kids Sprout. The service would soft launch as a branded on-demand service that same day. Then just 8 months later, on September 26th, 2005, PBS Kids Sprout launched as a channel and replaced the 24-hour PBS Kids channel. At launch, the channel had 16 million viewers across Comcast and Insight cable systems. This multi-platform approach was designed to appeal to different viewing habits. The Sprout channel featured day-parted programming blocks, which hosted segments such as activities, features, and promotions for supplemental content on the Sprout's website. To increase the variety of its schedule, Sprout did not repackage short-form series into half-hour episodes with interstitial segments, as had usually been the case for series imported for U.S. broadcast. Unlike PBS Kids and the associate PBS network, Sprout aired commercials, actual television commercials. However, they were only aired in small quantities, and they were only aimed at parents and caregivers. And at some of the cases, they also aired car insurance commercials. In any case, due to its ad-supported model, PBS Kids Sprout did not include any of the usual funding credits, typically displayed at the end or beginning of programs on the primary PBS network. Some PBS stations intend to advertise PBS Kids Sprout on local PBS stations, like WBGU TV, alongside with other PBS affiliates. Among the first shows to air on the channel included Barney and Friends, Big Sister Little Brother, Pingu, Angelina Ballerina, Booba, Caillou, Make Way for Naughty, Sesame Street, and Teletubbies. Bob the Builder and Thomas and Friends were also added to the channel. Not to mention, Zaboomafoo and other PBS library programs also made their way into the channel as well. When the channel launched, day-parted programming blocks showed up. This included The Birthday Show and The Goodnight Show. In spring 2009, it was announced that the Wiggles would be moving to PBS Kids Sprout from its previous broadcaster, Playhouse Disney, the preschool programming block offshoot on Disney Channel. This would coincide with the launch of a new programming block hosted by the group called Sprout's Wiggly Waffle. The reason for this move was due to competition from the Imagination Movers, a children's music group from New Orleans who recently received their own TV show of the same name in September of 2008. The move took effect on August 24, 2009. The following month, the channel rebranded to simply Sprout. However, the full name continued to be used on-screen graphics to reflect PBS's ownership stake in the channel until deadline. A high-definition HD feed simulcast of the network was launched in September of 2010. 2010 would be an interesting year for Sprout. Not only that they launched in HD, but they also began to invest in long-form programming. In other words, they began to invest on making original programming for the network. September 25th, 2010 would see the premiere of Noodle and Doodle. That same day, the Sunny Side Up show began to air every single day of the week, including weekends. Another spin-off of the Sunny Side Up show was introduced, called The Chica Show. 2010 would also see another program called The Pajanimals getting their own long-form series. PBS Kids Sprout in its early days was operated on the 24th floor of Comcast Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. After being in the 20th floor of 2000 Market Street across the street to better accommodate the small crew. Its main target audience was originally preschoolers and featured schedules based on the day. Morning programming featured shows designed for kids to get ready for the day. Late morning and afternoon programming featured educational shows for kids, and evening programming was designed to get kids ready to go to sleep. Shortly after the channel launch, Andrew Beckenham and Sandy Wax drove to a facility in Baltimore, Maryland, where they watched a a focus group of 50 moms talking about the new channel through a one-way mirror. Shortly after Sprout launched, Andrew Beckenham was crowned Senior Vice President of Programming and Sandy Wax as President. Unlike most American children's channels at the time, Sprout had links between shows hosted by gentle adults. Beckham came from Britain. Yes, he's British. Beckenham founded the hosting format at Playhouse Disney UK. In the following years after Sprout was launched, before 2010, it started making way for new day-parted programming blocks like the Let's Go show that aired in the afternoon and later weekends. Launched on June 25th, Musical Mornings and the Sunny Side Up show, which both aired on weekday mornings, both launched on Sprout's second anniversary. And the Sprout Sharing Show, which aired in the afternoons, launched on May 5th, 2008, with a new show, Pick Me, an Irish cartoon in which viewers could see their heads on an animated body on television. Sprout also launched the Sprout for Parents and the Sprout Please websites, as well as Sprout Smart, Great Sprout Tuck In promotions. New on-screen graphics were introduced, with a new season of The Goodnight Show premiering on September 21st, 2009, and Nina guested on the Sunny Side Up show to promote the new season. Sprout received a major facelift that same day. Each block and most shows opened with Sproutlets or their parents opened in a cardboard shoebox with the Sprout logo. Ideas and branding were designed by the company Trace Pictures, under the eye founder of Justin Stevenson. In 2011, Sprout launched Kindness Counts, a campaign containing PSAs, and a website in response to children getting bullied, with the Great Sprout Tuck-In expanding. In 2013 and 14, the Kindness Kid Contest was held, in which one of 4, later 5 kind children would be selected to become the channel's chief kind officer for a day. A special was held both years in which all 5 finalists would be interviewed and the winner would be announced at the end, with kind theme songs in between. In the years that followed during those years, shows during the 2000s and into the 2010s, shows like The Hoops, Play With Me Sesame, Fireman Sam, Fifi and the Flower Tots, Pam Wappa, Dive Ollie Dive, Francis, Rory the Racing Car, The Mighty Jungle, Rubber Dubbers, The Wiggles, as always, is Dirt Girl World, Nina's Little Fables, Chloe's Closet, Monkey See, Monkey Do, Driver Dan's Story Train, What's Your News, Lazy Town, Poppycat, and Just in Time, 64 Zoo Lane, Olive the Ostrich, and Wibbly Pig first aired. During 2012, Sprout achieved its highest rated quarter ever with a household coverage of 0.22 rating to 120K homes. This marked the 5th consecutive quarter of audience gains for the network by later. However, 2011 and in 2012 until 2013, which saw a complex series in business decisions throughout the years, which ultimately led NBC Universal to basically get full control of the brand. To summarize in a little bigger point, Comcast acquired a 51% majority stake in Universal from General Electric on January 28, 2011, and would assume full ownership of the company in 2013, with Sprout in the hands of it. So, as a result, Comcast's interest in Sprout was turned over to the company. On October 24th, 2011, Apex Partners sold off Hit Entertainment to Mattel, Hot Wheels' parent company. The sale did not include Hit's stake in Sprout, which was retained by Apex Partners. In December 2012, Sesame Workshop sold its interest in Sprout to NBC Universal and Comcast, and then NBC Universal Comcast, as on March 19th, 2013, claimed and acquired the remaining 49% of NBC Universal, which it didn't own. Then Comcast then acquired PBS's share and Apex Partners' shares on November 12th, 2013, giving it full ownership. As a result, the network's operations were brought under the NBC Universal Cable Entertainment Group. The network's operations were later moved from Philadelphia to NBC Universal's facilities in New York at 30 Rockefeller Plaza. At the start of 2014, Sprout saw a 5% audience increase among preschoolers and a 3% gain in household compared to its fourth quarter of the previous year. The channel extended television's longest growth streak of total day delivery amongst 18 to 49-year-old women with its record of 2 full years of year-over-year gains. In those years following, while all that was going on, Sprout premiered brand new shows: Tree Food Tom, Sarah and Duck, Zoo, Stella and Sam, Zerby Derby, Lily's Driftwood Bay, Bodge, Earth to Luna, and later Super Waynes and Clangers, Maya the Bee, Sydney's Sailboat, and Yaya and Zook. While the complex series and business decisions was going on, in July of 2012, Sprout began to produce educational programming blocks for NBC and Telemundo, branded as NBC Kids and Mi Telemundo, respectively. Both blocks replaced Cubo, a previous joint venture between NBC Universal, Ion Media Networks Group, Chorus Entertainment, Scholastic, and Classic Media, who had aired on NBC and Telemundo since September 9th, 2006, and continued to air via a third programming block on Ion Television before being rebranded as Cubo Kids Corner on Ion Television, and before it will be discontinued in 2021. As well as having a separate 24-hour network until the brand was officially canned. NBC Kids and Mi Telemundo later switched over to educational programming. Mi Telemundo remained. However, NBC Kids was removed in the process and was replaced by NBC's The More You Know, produced by Litton Entertainment. Mi Telemundo would continued to air with existing programming until 2018, when the block became programmed by Litton Entertainment, which retained the Mi Telemundo name. On September 26, 2015, to celebrate the channel turning 10 years old, Sprout received a refresh, having new graphics introduced. However, this is where everything started to go downhill from here. After the channel was rebranded, a bunch of PBS's library shows were dropped. Programming from PBS Kids were dropped from the lineup completely. Various other older PBS Kids shows already left, with Dragon Tales being removed on August 31st, 2010, to make way for new original programming that Sprout was going for. Alongside with Zaboomerfoo being removed, alongside with Mama Maribel's home movies, which already been removed as well. The last show to premiere on Sprout was Sid the Science Kid. The last PBS Kids show to premiere on Sprout was Sid the Science Kid, which lasted until October 3rd, 2014. Fairly short-lived. That's crazy. However, this really isn't the end for all PBS Kids content as the Berenstain Bears would continue to remain on the channel until September 9th, 2017. So, yeah, you're surprised. Sesame Street was also removed as well. The former show aired until November as a result of a deal with Sesame Workshop made with HBO, although spin-off series Play With Me Sesame, a Noggin original which premiered on the channel after it left Noggin in 2007, continued to run until sometime the next year. As a result from this, all PBS shows, excluding the Berenstain Bears, were all gone and dropped. However, this wasn't really the end, though. This really isn't the end of Sprout, though, as more and more cuts and downsizes were also made. The Sunny Side Up show moved from the Sunshine Barn that we all know and love to a city loft with touchscreens, starting out with a road trip arc, and removed the and the show from its name. And it's now called Sunny Side Up. Sprout introduced two new shows, Nina's World and Sydney's Sailboat. Yeah, it's true. Under NBC Universal's ownership, Sprout began to increase its investments in original programming to better compete with Disney Junior and the Nick Jr. channel, respectively, with the goal to double its original series output to at least 30% of its schedule by the end of 2015, and displace older and non-exclusive library content in favor of original shows. And acquisitions exclusive to the channel. Sprout programs like The Chica Show also earned increased visibility, airing on NBC as part of the NBC Kids block. Actress Miss Alyssa Milano began to make appearances in an interstitial segment as Sprout's Mom Ambassador, with a particular focus on the channel's public service campaign, Kindness Counts. By now, nearly all shows inherited from PBS's library were dropped. Over a year later, the PBS Kids Sprout channel, which Sprout had replaced back in 2005, was revived as by PBS as a digital broadcast and online television network on January 16, 2017. The network's head, Sandy Wax, stated that Sprout also planned to experiment with more half-hour programs and commission programming with more complex stories that could appeal to older preschool audiences, possibly younger audiences too. Sprout eventually got new graphics. The channel's graphics are now more minimalist and more modern and more generic versus the crafty and creative graphics that they were going for. To coincide with that, they also got a new slogan called Free to Grow. Which was actually being monikered by Sprout's Mom Ambassador, Miss Alyssa. In mid-2016, it was announced that Sandy Wax will be stepping down as being president of Sprout by the end of the year. Eventually, NBC Universal decided that it's time to rebrand Sprout into something that everybody did not approve of. On May 1st, 2017, because Sprout was owned entirely by NBC Universal anyways, Universal publicly announced that Sprout would be rebranded as Universal Kids. And also, after the rebrand, the channel will begin airing shows aimed at preteens during primetime hours. They will also begin to acquire brand new shows, while also continue to focus on original programming. including some shows from DreamWorks Animation, who Universal purchased and acquired in 2016, and shows co-produced with the Family Network in Canada. The final PBS Kids show, The Berenstain Bears, the sole survivor that survived it ended on September 9th, 2017, which is the same day that Universal Kids had premiered. The reason why it was decided to relaunch Sprout as Universal Kids, the relaunched network would be aimed to be an umbrella brand for NBC Universal's family offerings, with Universal Kids introducing primetime programming targeting a wider youth and preteen audience, while still maintaining to carry preschool programming as a block under the Sprout branding, airing from 3 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time daily. Apparently, that kind of schedule kind of reminds me of Discovery Family's schedule. Remember when the Hub network transitioned from the Hub to Discovery Family? Its primetime lineup was replaced with non-fictional shows from the Discovery Channel's library. Yeah, that's right. The new CEO at the time, Didier Brennan, explained that Sprout needed to grow up with the rest of the family, and that Universal Kids would offer something to 2 to 12-year-olds that has a slightly different purpose, widening their eyes, opening their minds, and celebrating many aspects of being a kid, with a slogan called "Being a Kid is Universal." The network would launch with a slate of original non-scripted series, including Bear Grylls, Survival School, and Top Chef Jr. Universal intended to make significant investments in original content for Universal Kids over the next 3 years, including original scripted programming. The launch lineup included a large number of international acquisitions, particularly from the United Kingdom, Australia, and Canada, such as The Next Step and Nowhere Boys. Just before the Universal Kids launched, in 2016, Sprout aired the remaining episodes of the failed PBS show Space Racers. The rest of the episodes were burnt off. Just like Boomerang and Nicktoons Network, the Sprout channel was used as a burn-off channel, as Space Racers was one of the PBS Kids shows that premiered. Season 1 aired on PBS Kids first. The second season premiered on Sprout later on. Space Racers continued to air until October of 2020. The years that followed before the Universal Kids debut, we see shows like Zerby Derby, Lily's Driftwood Bay, alongside with Little People, The Doozers, The Furchester Hotel, Topsy and Tim, which already premiered before the Universal Kids rebrand, Ranger Rob, Masha and the Bear, Little Roy, Ollie the Boy who became What I Ate, Charlie and Lola, Pablo, and later on in 2018 they aired Dino Dan and Go Jetters and Moon and Me. It was also been said and was revealed that Universal Kids will also feature programming produced by DHX Media for the Family Channel and sister networks, as well as co-produced shows with the company such as the sitcom Bajillionaires. DHX recently entered a programming agreement with DreamWorks Animation for its networks. DreamWorks will be leveraged by Universal Kids to bolster its programming with linear television premieres, such as DreamWorks Netflix series such as All Hail King Julian and DreamWorks Dragons, Riders of Berk, which previously aired on Cartoon Network before before it left CN by spring 2015 and would be moving to Netflix as part of its launch lineup. The industry observers felt that the integration of DreamWorks IP with Universal Kids would help Universal establish a viable multi-platform competitor to other major children's networks. The network planned to continue investing in preschool programming for the Sprout block. The CEO said that Sprout is the greatest thing there is. Sprout, that the greatest thing is there is nothing to fix there. Sprout is a beautiful brand. If anything, we want to invest more in original production. There is more we can explore there. While there were mixed feelings and opinions on Universal Kids, this would actually become its downfall. While every single plan on paper is been slated by Universal, this is actually great on paper. However, this really did not set well with audiences. So what happened? Unfortunately, around the time, all these changes to the network seemed to negatively impact the channel's viewership. It dropped 30% in 2017, and by 2018, the channel saw a whopping 73%. And Brennan was fired and was replaced by Francis Berwick as network president in February of 2019. On June 19th, it was reported that Universal Kids has ceased development in original programming and laid off all of its development staff or transferred them over to NBC Universal properties. In April of that same year of 2019, Universal Kids unveiled a new logo and branding designed by the design agency Kill Two Birds. So what was it? Why was it decided to stop producing new original series, though? Well, to try and recover Universal Kids financially, they stopped producing and developing new original shows and series and shifted their focus back to strictly acquired shows that Sprout was going for. Just before that, the network was bringing back most of the old shows that used to air on Sprout back in the day. That. So the network began to bring back older shows that used to air on Sprout out back in the day. Before it was Universal Kids with Ready Steady Wiggle on June 5th, 2017. Before the Universal Kids rebrand, Barney and Friends on December 17th, 2018, Bob the Builder on Ready Steady Build on April 22nd, 2019, and The Chica Show on May 20th, 2019. In later years, this was no longer the case as Universal Kids aired marathons every single day before its deadline shut down. To be honest, this was only done because the channel was suffering in the ratings. There was more than why would Sprout was rebranded to Universal Kids. This was due to NBC Universal cable networks dealing with declining TV ratings across the sector. Because of the popularity of the streaming, Sprout, being one of the NBC Universal's lowest rated cable channels with a revenue of $102 million in 2016. During the time, new acquisitions were added, like Olivia, Charlie and Lola, Ollie the Boy Who Became What He Ate, and Pablo. The Sprout name was used for the channel's 15-hour preschool block until early 2018. As a result, Sunny Side Up was replaced by a pre-recorded interstitial series called The Sprout House. Later, it was been rebranded and was renamed as Snug's House. It was hosted by veteran Sunny Side Up show host Carly, an orange puppet dog named Snug, with occasional appearances from a human character named TJ, and a set remnants of the tiny house movement, and was seldom live. When Universal Kids launched, a Sprout block aired from 3 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern, but the Sprout name and website were both removed in 2018, leaving the only traces of Sprout left being the Sunny Side Up show backdrop and a Sarah and Duck promo picture, and the flower-shaped window on the Sprout House set. Since 2017, the network has been bringing back older shows that used to air on its channel when it was originally known as Sprout. Apparently, it was already too late, as the damage was done. Not only that, but there was no other way to reel back its audience anymore, because much of the shows that aired on Sprout / Universal Kids back in the day, they were all gone. However, eventually the network did try to air different shows like Cody Kapow alongside with Super Buns. They keep bringing back older shows, but nothing seems to work. Nobody isn't interested into watching a marathon channel of Masha and the Bear. However, a big mistake would come into view, as in June 2021, Universal Kids made a big mistake. They acquired the rights to air CoComelon, of all things, for no reason whatsoever. Seriously, who even asked for CoComelon at that point? Nobody didn't ask for CoComelon to be on Universal Kids. Nobody! I mean, nobody! I forgot to mention that in the years followed before the Universal Kids and the Sprout downfall, there were other day-parted programming blocks like Sprout Diner, Musical Mornings with Koo, and the Super Sproutlet Show, and from September 26th, 2015 to September 8th, 2017, Sprout aired Family Movie Night. Short-form programming were also aired, like Sing It Lori, Lori Berkner, who was seen from Jack's Big Music Show, alongside with NBC News for Universal Kids, Muffy, Masha and the Bear Nursery Rhymes, oh my god, Jesus, Babble Bop, Masha and the Bear Shorties, and Masha's Karaoke and Songs. After Universal Kids stopped and halted new original series, it shifted their focus towards acquired shows. They started shifting their focus towards the Peacock, a streaming service that will contain much of the programming that aired on Sprout and Universal Kids, alongside with other webtoon content like Baby Shark and, as always, CoComelon for no odd reason. And also they also have Rory the Racing Car and Fifi and the Flower Tots. Honestly, I saw Rory the Racing Car being on Peacock, actually. And no, this is not a US dub, actually. This is the original UK dub. Prior to Apex Partners being sold off to Mattel, and also prior to Hit Entertainment being under Mattel, which means that Fifi and the Flower Tots and Rory the Racing Cars were both removed from Sprout completely. And also that Hit Entertainment lost the license to both of those shows. With no new original programming and with strictly acquired content, this caused the channel to stagnate over the years. And it was no surprise that if Universal Kids tried to survive the 2020s, it could not live past this decade. But unfortunately, it would not be. With a whole network being a compilation network, being with the Trolls, Masha and the Bear, and whatever programming that they had there, nothing seems to work, as their matters is already been in the hole. And this would be to marking the end of Universal Kids. On January 7th, 2025, customer notices sent out by cable providers that Universal Kids would no longer be distributed as of March 5th, with NBC Universal confirming that the channel's wind-down date on January 13th. The network's closure came after Comcast announced its intent to spin off most of its channel properties. With the exception of Bravo into a separately traded company on announcement which notably excluded Universal Kids. The network's website was redirected to its last days to that of the underdevelopment Universal Kids Resort in Frisco, Texas. The network quietly closed down at midnight Eastern Time on March 6th, following an interstitial musical segment from Normal Pickle Stripes. After which, a screen with looping music stated that Universal Kids is no longer in service was shown, later replaced by individual providers by advisory cards. And honestly, a lot of people were really sad and such. However, some had sympathy, others not so much. Most people gave a shit about that channel. However, most people did not give a shit. What do you expect? A bouquet of roses or something from Amusing Lewis's little quote, actually? A lot of people didn't like the Universal Kids change. I know this is a business. I know this is a business perspective because the channel saw a decline during 2016, but however, do not fix what it ain't broke, actually. Seriously, don't ever fix that ain't broken. And Sprout is one of those cases. And honestly, Sprout just needed to bring back older PBS content in the end, because they were the main reason why. In most cases, from Lulu Loopsy and Amusing Lewis, the channel should have been left alone. Meaning, do not invest into acquiring a channel that has abundance of content and is basically a PBS version of the Noggin channel. To be matters of which, while Noggin was still up and running, Sprout was one of the reasons why Noggin wasn't doing so well in recent years. After Sesame Workshop sold its share of Noggin to Viacom and Paramount. Prior to Noggin being split into two blocks, the channel's main focus was on preschoolers, while Noggin's original audience had the N, which had not all of the old Noggin shows, and didn't fill the void that Noggin left behind because it added explicit shows like Degrassi, The Next Generation, alongside with The Offbeat, alongside with O'Grady, and other such. While they did have A Walk in Your Shoes, Ghost Rider, and Spunk. Most of the Noggin stuff aired on the block Cable in the Classroom. Cable in a Classroom is basically a partly morning graveyard slot for between Noggin and the End's programming, which aired Sesame Workshop shows alongside with one of Noggin's older original shows called The Fred on Your Head Show, alongside with some of the Sesame Street episodes. And honestly, judging by the fact that with Sesame Workshop now onto like with PBS, Comcast, and Hit Entertainment, and much of the Sesame Workshop shows that were on Noggin were gone. That were all gone. All replaced with Nick Jr. shows. With Noggin's viewers not being interested in what they had to offer, and also with the preschoolers not being interested and waiting until the next day to watch Noggin, they switched to PBS Kids Sprout. PBS Kids Sprout had existed, and it kind of took Noggin's viewership by surprise, and so Noggin had suffered even after we branded into a network for preschoolers. And with Sprout being put on the map, this caused Noggin to start going down and down, and Noggin eventually went downhill. Looking back at the channel now, it's said that this year will be marking Sprout's 20th anniversary of its existence. And honestly, I miss Sprout as much as the next person, and I don't think it was smart for NBC Universal to rebrand it. Maybe they could have just sold maybe they could have sold the network back to its original owners rather than just rebranding it. Will PBS, Comcast, Hit Entertainment, and Sesame Workshop bring it back today? Probably not. Yes, I know Hit Entertainment does not exist anymore, but they still do exist. However, they're now under a new name of Mattel. Yeah. As of right now, competition is still running wild as Disney Jr. and Nick Jr. are still going at it, while Cartoonito will be returning beginning September 1st. During the alternate universe, Walt Tysberg Jr. still nails the preschool generation scene while airing older PBS content alongside with older Discovery Kids preschool shows, older Nick Jr. shows, recycled Noggin shows, recycled preschool shows, and having themselves to air abundance of their original programming. It is no surprise that there's no need for Sprout to return. However, thankfully, someone did try to revive Sprout actually through a web channel though. But I don't know if it's still going or not. Will Sprout come back? Probably not. But we must be thankful that we had a PBS Kids Sprout network to begin with. And with Universal Kids gone, this is a bright chance for Cartoonito to return. And thankfully, initially, they still have brand new upcoming projects in development from Hanna-Barbera, Studios Europe, and CN Studios. Sprout may not have the best recognition and as it was back in the 2000s and in the early 2010s, but it's still the legendary, fascinated brand that everyone ever asked for. PBS Kids Sprout, we will never forget you. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and have a nice day. Thanks for watching this video. If you like this video, please consider subscribing and turn on post notifications, which is the bell right next to the subscribe button. Also, don't forget to share this video and comment. Some requests may be accepted.